I was just thinking of the verse, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And so she's just going to be my little sidekick here because she struggles with public speaking. But I have to say I'm very proud of her because she went out of the country where it was a bit nerve-wracking for both of us, of course. And so she's faced massive fears. And so she's eventually going to get over the public speaking fear. But anyway, first I want to say there is a God, and he deserves honor. It's amazing to see him work in the lives of people, even on the other side of the world. And as we go through this PowerPoint, Ben, I'll let you know when I'm ready for the next one. Not yet, okay, because there's a little tidbit on here that I wanted to mention. This started back in October 22nd of 2012. You know us, and you know Steve likes cars, and I've just learned to kind of just go with it. And Michaela and I tag team together. She goes with him, I go with him sometimes we go together, all three of us, and we were at a car show in Somerset, Kentucky, and it was great, but I got thirsty. That's all that happened. And I saw a tent. They were selling pork rinds or something like that, in which I don't really have any interest in, but I just needed water. That's it. That's all I needed was water. And so I went over there, and they had all kinds of pictures, and then it was real obvious to me that this was a church. And so I just started asking questions. God always tells me community, go and serve the community, and I love it, and mission trips. And that's been a recurrent theme in my life for all of my adult life, actually. And so as I was talking to this woman who became my friend over these last several months, Hannah, I found myself saying, could I go? And then I thought, holy mackerel, why did I say that? And she said, sure. And so she gave me the phone number of the leader, okay? And so I stressed over that for about 2 weeks, and I was told that there was going to be an informational meeting, just come and find out what we're about. This was First Baptist through Somerset, and it's a big church. And so I prayed for 2 weeks, God, should I go or should I not? Should I go or should I not? And I was not getting a clear yes or no. I like yes or no. God doesn't always function that way. But on November the 6th, I got up that morning, it was a Sunday, and I prayed again, God, you have not told me, should I go, should I not? And I just happened to open up my journal book that morning, and then Ben, go ahead and flip onto the next slide, please. And this was the verse. It's not a coincidence. This is how God works, okay? So you did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you should go. Now, is that any clearer? And bear fruit, okay? And your fruit should abide so that whatever you ask in the Father in my name, he may give it to you. And I thought, okay, I guess I'm going to go find out some more. And of course I went by myself actually, and by the time our short meeting was over, I said, I'll go. I don't know how it's going to work because I've got all these other commitments. So that was on a Sunday, and on Monday, everything went pow, 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 and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is spooky, So anyway, a friend of mine had said, Amy, a few days later, have you thought about asking Steve and Michaela to go? And I'm like, well, no, I didn't think about that. But anyway, long story short, she got on board, and she felt led to go as well. And boy, we had an interesting event, for sure. So go ahead and switch on to the next slide, please. There were so many things that happened that led up to us going to Africa. Kenya is just a tiny little portion, as you can see here. 3 planes. It was not fun, but we made it in one piece. 2 of those planes were 8-hour flights, and we took turns falling asleep in the airport floors, and I didn't care, and she didn't care. But they have around 5 million people that live in Nairobi alone. Actually, there's probably a whole lot more than that because there's babies everywhere, it seems, and people walking everywhere. And I estimated we traveled at least 16,000 miles. That was not including all the driving that we did while there as well. So I want to make sure, go ahead to the next slide, please, that I know to make sure that I noticed all these people. There were 26 of us. It was not just us, obviously. And the ages, she was the youngest. The oldest was 78. One was a man, one was a woman. The 78-year-old did circles around me in work. She just was amazing. But so we had 20s. There was one that was 35, a couple in their 40s, several of us that were in our 50s, and then 5 in their 70s. So don't let age slow you down is my point there. So move on to the next slide. These are our leaders, and I wanted to make sure I give notice of them as well, because they did such a phenomenal job. They've been doing this for years. They got started back in 2015. I'm not sure exactly how they got connected to the orphanage that we went to, but they saw kids that were starving to death, that were in just dire need of medical everything. They didn't even have beds to sleep on. I mean, it was dire. And so they made a promise to God back then that they would do something, and they have done lots of some things. I would never be able to do it justice. They're married, and they're just a phenomenal team. God has really gifted them. I do have to say they don't require much sleep, which Michaela and I struggled with significantly. So I was glad to come home and sleep, and she still hasn't gotten over that. Go on to the next slide. So I've already mentioned husband, wife. They've been making it their mission to help. This was their 6th trip, and the things that they have done there is just mind-boggling to me. So next slide. June 2nd, around midnight, is when we actually arrived, and someone took my suitcase. So we got in Nairobi, and I like things in order. If you're on a mission trip, you're not going to get order, okay? I freaked out a little bit, and then I just thought, okay, God's trying to teach me something. Just go with it. I had one shirt, one I was wearing, one pair of underwear, one that I was wearing, socks and shoes and shorts. That was it. So I had some nice ladies give me a few things, thank goodness, and I looked like horrible, but God used that anyway. And 4.5 days later, I got my suitcase and everything was in it, and it ended up being another mission group that had it. It was amazing. But anyway, God has a sense of humor. So June 2nd, and please tell me if I'm going too long. Okay, Michaela always tells me that I speak too long. But just to kind of give you an idea of the things that we did. So we got there around midnight. Go ahead to the next slide. We went to bed around 2:30-ish, and they're 8 hours ahead of us, and then we were told we got to get up at 6:30 and go to the orphanage. I thought they were insane, and I still do, but we survived again. And so this is something that was typical when we got there. Nairobi is just dirt poor. It's amazing what you can live without. And just that small amount of taking my suitcase away helped me to realize that, I believe. So on to the next slide, just a couple of things that we saw along the way. There are so many hundreds of pictures that Michaela and I have that I'm not going to be able to do it justice. But again, I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of what we saw and experienced. Yes, and so the motorcycles that you see here, they're taxis. And I had a little girl tell me you can get 5 people on one. I believe it. I saw 4. But she was adamant 5. And so they do have other modes of transportation, but walking is a big one. People just walk, and they're out in the middle of nowhere, and you think, where are they going? I don't know, but they're walking. So next slide, Merciful Redeemer Orphanage is where we actually went. And again, out in the middle of nowhere, the chug holes, the craters, the road, it was crazy. The first day I thought we would die. And I was convinced I'd made a mistake. But we got to the orphanage. The kids met us there. They were crying, or I was crying. I'm assuming you had tears, because they sang to us and they danced and they were so joyful, and it was amazing. Anyway, truly amazing. And exhaustion. Of course, she took lots of naps on the bus, and I did too occasionally. Everybody did. But by the end of that day, I again had thought, I've made a mistake. Well, we didn't have Wi-Fi until we were at the place that we were staying. And so early in the morning, And real late in the evenings, we would have a little bit of Wi-Fi, and we'd get connected and say, "Yay!" And my texts would come in, but that's all I could do. And I had two girlfriends, go on to the next slide. Oh, there it is, never mind. Sent me this verse that's not a coincidence. So God said, "Haven't I commanded you to be strong and courageous? Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." So I said, okay, obviously you sent us here. So I prayed for strength, and it got easier, it got better. But I tell you, culture shock is crazy, crazy, crazy. And so on Sunday, we were up bright and early again, and this was the church that we attended. It's just everything's metal. I would hate to be there in 100-plus degree weather, but if there is a crack, there's at least 10 kids in that crack. You think that church is full? It's not. You can pour more people into this. And they worshiped. Do you want to say anything about the worship? It was crazy. They worship God in a way that we do not understand here. I was back there thinking, well, this is my same old, I sway. And they get up and they dance and they clap and they praise God. And I've never seen anything like it. And it was like that everywhere. I'm just convinced that God has put some kind of wonderful genetic gene in each one of them and says, "You will worship me." So one of the things that we did, baptism. That day we were there, they said, "We've got people that are going to get baptized today." And the preacher said, "We're going to walk to where we're getting baptized. It's just a little way." Was it a little way? No, it was not a little way. So we walked with all these 300 or so, 400, I don't know how many were there, a lot, down the road a long way, and we finally got to a pool that I was shocked existed, and there were 12 of their people that were baptized, and then one in our group who had became a Christian a month before and then went on this mission trip. Talk about faith. And so now I've got 63 on there because a bunch of the people that were baptized were at the orphanage as well, so they have a revival going on at this orphanage, and so they were waiting for somebody to baptize them. And so they blew up, as you can see here, a little pool, and they dunked them, one right after another. That was really neat. So next slide, just some of the faces of the kids that were there. I mean, it just won't do it justice, you guys. And then on to the next slide, I want to make sure that I tell you about Patrick. He was a special little kid that we met on the first day, and he was laying in a crib, and he was pitiful. He couldn't sit up, he couldn't talk, he couldn't do anything, and I thought, my gosh, this child, and that people had just left him in this crib, and my heart just went out to him. Well, evidently I was not the only one that felt that way, because the next day that we went back, somebody had brought a wheelchair. I don't know where it came from, somebody obviously bought it, but so I got the privilege of picking this little boy up and sticking him in the wheelchair, and I tied him in with a blanket the best I could, and he started perking up a little bit. Well, that was how he was with the whole time we were there, but since we've come back, we've heard that a physical therapist there in Kenya volunteered to keep him in her home for a month. They have discovered he was severely malnourished, potassium, zinc, and he has seizures, and they have adjusted his food, and he has miraculously started turning around. I was sent a video yesterday, and he's talking just a little bit now, so I mean, that's like, it's huge, 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 huge. So next slide, on the right here was the original kitchen for this orphanage. I just kind of want to give you an idea of what it used to look like. They just use that for, just throw stuff in there. The updated kitchen is a whole lot better. They don't have air conditioning, they don't have heat and things like that, but let's take a peek inside to that, and there we go. Kitchen appliances, new paint. They had stoves on the other side of the kitchen before where they literally put wood in, and it would smoke the kitchen up. So now they've got ovens that they can hook to a generator that somebody found out in the middle of nowhere, and the group supposedly donated $1,000 to have this generator fixed. So now they can cook for these kids, and they just hook it up to the generator. And they have a refrigerator, it's huge, huge. And then we got a mixer and fryer maybe. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but just kind of give you an idea of that is like massive in Kenya. One of the other things that went on, goat pen. I love goats. I enjoyed this. I didn't get to participate in building the goat pen, but I did pick up the goats, and you played with them a little bit. But anyway, so somebody donated 20 goats to them. They were pregnant. They eat goats over there, by the way. Huge thing for Kenya. The next one was a water collection system that was taking place of, so you can't see the gutters on there, but water in Kenya or in Africa in general, I'm sure you guys can imagine, it just doesn't happen very often. And so when they do have water, they catch it from whatever buildings they have, and they collect it in these huge black things, and they can store water for like up to a year, but they're very stingy on how much is allowed to go for obvious reasons. So at 2 o'clock every day, the water was shut off. So if you didn't have water in a container, you were just out of luck. We did not drink their water, by the way. We always had to have bottled water otherwise we would have got sick. Another thing, picnic tables. Kelly did a lot of painting with that. I helped a little bit, but the kids use picnic tables to eat. They have a very, very close-knit group. It's like a family. All these little kids, they help each other. Did you notice that? The little kids were taking care of the babies, and vice versa. Truly amazing. So next slide has to do with our nursery. There was already a nursery built. It was not by our team, but we were asked to paint it, which we did, and that was fun. Enjoyed that, inside and out. And so you can see a few of the things that went on there. They did provide it with toys and carpet, and these little babies were basically hanging out in their cribs all day long unless somebody went in and got them, and so that was wonderful to be able to see that as well. They kind of had a flat affect because they weren't interacted with a lot. So Dan and Tabitha had hired a nanny, I guess within the last maybe year or two. She gets paid $180. She gets free room and board, and she takes care of the babies. So they were smiling a little bit by the time we had left, and so that was good to see. And then the next one, we did try out Kenyan food. It's a lot different than what we have here. She didn't like it. I don't know how she lived. Granola bars and fruit roll-ups and goldfish and not much. Peanut butter and jelly, I've made her eat several times. So next slide, some of the little babies. If there was a baby, she held it. Of course, no surprise, right? Next slide, please. Lots of crafts. I just stuck myself on there. There's so many things. There were t-shirts they made. There were paintings that they did. Remind me of some of the things that they did. Bracelets. Yeah, there were lots of fun things that people did. I made little maraca shakers with them. Okay, the next one. Rat-proof storage shed was another thing. It's just what it is. They got rats. They got bed bugs. They got all kinds of stuff. It's just... So anyway, they got something now that prevents their food from being eaten. Next one, curtain screens. This is a typical bunk bed area. It didn't smell the best, but at least they got beds. They got a place to call home. So one of the ladies had made the curtains. My height came in handy, putting up the curtains. I bonded with the older women. They were wonderful. The next one is the water system that was installed. I just took a picture of that. Can't really tell you much other than I saw them dig it. And they connected it. Next slide. Squat toilets. Showers is the next one. Flushing squat toilets. They have outhouses there. And we used a pop-up to use the bathroom in. It was humbling. But we survived. It was hot and there were lots of flies. But for them to have a squat toilet that flushes, it's like huge, huge. Next one. Cornhole. Oh, do you want to say anything about the cornhole?
I painted up.
And the kids?
The kids enjoy playing with it.
Yeah, they never fought over it, but...
They don't like the rules. They just want to get it in the hole, and that's...
They had never seen a cornhole game before, and oh my gosh, that was huge. They loved it. Okay, next. Yeah, lots of meals. Peanut butter and jelly is universal, I believe. We ate it too. Okay, next. This was the nanny. I already told you a little bit about her. She was really wonderful. They hand wash everything, by the way, as well, so that was one of her duties too. Do you know what her name was? No. Most of their names are biblical names, which I thought was kind of neat. There's lots of scripture in Kenya, which is another fun fact I was surprised to find out about. All right, next. We had lots of ups and downs on our trip. Exhaustion. Sometimes we would get on each other's nerves. You got 26 people with all individual personalities. It's going to happen, you know. But there was a point, maybe into a week of it, I started thinking about that verse. And every day, morning's always my best time, even in Kenya. I really, she didn't like me, but everybody knew morning was my best time, and I would always quote that. And so it's, it brings back pleasant memories. All right, so next one, next slide. Yes, joy and celebrating occurred all the time, no joke. Everybody was grateful for anything that you gave them. It could be a small little toy. It could be blankets in this case. I mean, they just were so joyous. Even the adults, welcoming beyond welcoming. And Jesus is definitely preached there, at least where we came into contact with people. Okay, next. I'm trying to not make this too long, Laurie, I'm sorry. Okay, so proof that Michaela was carrying kids. And they were always trying to sell us something if we stopped somewhere. Okay, so we'll move on to the next slide. Oh, that was sweet. Do you want to say anything about that? The last day, the kids sang this song to us. And again, it was another tear jerker. God be with you until we meet again. It was wonderful, truly amazing. All right, one more thing, and then we'll quickly go through. This is really cool. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but our church had donated money that they decided need to be for Bibles, and so there were 500, and Bibles were given out. And we had a women's outreach at a nursing home, and we had around 300 women plus their kids that showed up. And the day that we were there, they actually had to shut the gates because people just kept on coming. You know, they're just, whatever they can get, the word spreads very quickly. Well, they fed them also while we were there. So we were taking food out, plate after plate after plate. And I thought, there's no way we're going to have enough food for all these people because it was heaping plates full of food. And I thought, I go into the kitchen, and Kayla helped a lot. There was a bunch of us that were helping. And I go in and I think, it's got to be, the food has to be gone. No, there'd still be more, and there'd still be more. Well, I found out a couple of the women that were in there were saying fishes and loaves, fishes and loaves, fishes and loaves. So they never ran out of food, and even to the little kids. And at the very end, they still had food, and they made us eat also. And I'm like, I really, you know, I'll be glad to try something. Well, this heaping plate full again, and I was like, I'll eat it because you gave it to me. But another miracle that happened while we were giving out that food, they ran out of spoons and plates. And remember the little maracas that I made, the little spoon with the little shaker in it? The kids took that off, and suddenly they had 150 spoons. So that was another miracle. The thing about those Bibles is when we first got there, we had not brought the Bibles, and I had went to Tabitha, the leader, and I said, this is really important. You know, we can feed them and we can have fun things to do with them, but unless we give them scripture, you know, it's not going to mean a whole lot. And so she said, I don't know, we're going to see if we can get it here. And I prayed and I said, God, you know, we need those Bibles. You know, it'd be great if you could get us these Bibles. And I said, I'd appreciate it if you could get them. And I had been asked to share the gospel. I did not ask to do that. And so I had an interpreter. That was amazing. I think she said what I said. I don't know. I hope so. There were a few kind of questionable things. But anyway, nonetheless, I did. It was an honor, you know, to be able to do that. And we got to give them out Bibles. And I just happened to take tracts with me and slipped them in each of their little bags. And so they got that too. So go ahead and... So kids and tape. If they scream, put tape on their forehead. I found out it fixes everything. I just thought that was fun. That was an accident, but nonetheless, they loved it. Next slide. Okay, so the men, while we were ministering to the women, the men went out to 2 prisons, and they had 45 salvations. The men's prison, there were 900 men that showed up. They only took 100 Bibles of those 500 with them. They were so desperate to get Bibles, a brawl started, and they had to shut everything down. And so they left the Bibles with the prisoners. Nonetheless, the gospel was shared, and later somehow they found out 45 men had accepted Christ, and then they went to a women's prison. It was amazing. So quickly, just a few things here. Oh, okay, let me see if I missed anything. Goat house built, screens made, new curtains, new baby building, new kitchen painted, kitchen faucets, I didn't say that. Cornhole, yes. Squat toilets, yes. Showers, yes, I mentioned that. Lots of things were done on this trip. It's amazing. Go ahead. Women's outreach, yes. Prison, Bibles, malnourished child, that was Patrick. Crafts, toys given. Oh, they were so appreciative of those toys. Water collection, I showed you that. Generator, rat-proof storage. Solar outdoor lights, I didn't know that happened. I heard about it. And the bed bugs had overtaken their wooden beds, so they put in metal beds while we were there. This is just fun stuff. I mean, if you say Africa, what do you think of that, right? So I got to add it. So you can go on to the next. Mount Kilimanjaro is a dormant volcano, and we got to see that the whole time we were there. That was really neat. Lots of elephants. That was cool. We could hear them eating, and they come up and just flap right in front of us. Okay, Messiah tribe, man, they're the jumping people. Have you ever seen them jump? I was asked and greatly coerced to jump with them, and I did. It was highly embarrassing, but it was fun. They live in dung houses. Oh, I still struggle with that. They were very welcoming, but I didn't want to stay. And that's their women. Okay. Just a pretty picture. The beauty there is not the same as here. Okay, this is my last slide. So I don't know how long I've taken, and I apologize. But basically, I just want to say, if God gives you an opportunity to do something, just go. I mean, it was awful coming back. I thought I was going to pass out, but God will take you on adventures that you can't comprehend. I would have never picked Kenya, but challenge yourself and just take a step out in faith. That would be my recommendation for you. It was worth it, don't you think? Yeah. I don't want to go back next year, but it was worth it. It was rough. All right, thanks everybody.